Danielle tells me you're out there. So I am Brenda Simon from the Natural Curiosity team. I'll be facilitating this session with Danielle's help, who is also from the Natural Curiosity team. And I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement, and then I'm going to introduce our very interesting speaker for today. So we acknowledge the traditional territory upon which this conference is being hosted. For many thousands of years, the Huron, Wendat, and Petun First Nations, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit have sought to walk gently on this land. This territory is covered by Treaty 13 and the Mississaugas of the Credit, as well as the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the lands and resources around the Great Lakes. This acknowledgement signals our desire to seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one based on honor and deep respect, and is a starting point to remind us all to enact this work in our personal and professional lives. I'm very pleased to introduce to you today Melissa Bulgutch, who is a teacher with the TDSB. She has been learning from and teaching kindergarten up to grade 7 since 2001. Christy Belcourt in her keynote this afternoon talked about the reciprocity between mentors and elders and children. And Melissa is right there learning from and teaching her students. Melissa's interdisciplinary program, Outdoor Environmental Literacy, makes the most of her degrees in psychology, education, and information studies. She shares her professional journey at conferences such as this one and Koyo and on Twitter. Welcome, Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Danielle. Thank you, Brenda. That was a lovely introduction. I will pop up my screen so that we know that it's working and ready to go while I say hello. If you are able to introduce yourselves in the chat, that would be great to get a sense of who is here. Thank you for joining us. It's wonderful to be able to share a program that I am so passionate about and that brings so much joy to my life. And I'm told my students are happy as well, most days at least. So thanks for coming, and I appreciate your time. My goals today are to share some of my philosophy of education, to explain the thinking and the rationale behind this program, and to give you ideas, programming ideas, to offer you, I hope, some inspiration, whether you are trying to incorporate more outdoor time with your students or different ways of being outside with kids. So I see people are saying hello. Thank you. Hi, Tracy. Oh, bonjour.
Yeah.
Wow, we're outside of Toronto. This is exciting. Welcome, everyone. Fantastique. Oh, wow, Calgary too. Okay. So I guess we have people who have been teaching and learning from the computer screen for probably longer than usual, and others who are still able to be out with students. You'll notice that just about all of these photos are pre-COVID time. We had a few obstacles with documenting through photographs this year with masks and permissions, and so the ideas are building and growing. The pictures, though, are mostly from 2019. Let's carry on. Thank you. You can keep on introducing yourselves. I thought I'd start off with this somewhat peculiar photo of students. They are not just demonstrating their strength here. They are demonstrating significant learning. And I'll let you consider this as we go through the philosophy portion of this talk. and then you'll see the content soon. All right. When I'm thinking about what to introduce to my students or which paths to take once they've expressed interest in a topic, I'm thinking about this pyramid. And I do work with little students and older students. Oh, pardon me. One moment, I just need to be able to see better. There we go. I really believe that once students have had enough exposure to being outside, then they will care. And so the idea of developing empathy for all life. No one wants to be squishing the worms and the ants. We have lots of snail rescues, especially in kindergarten. And I find the more time the students spend outside, the more comfortable and eager they are to come back outside. With the older students, it's easier to add a layer of context and pull in current events to make what we do more meaningful and more authentic. And then finally, taking action, whether that be offering the neighbors information about dog strangling vine and then going over and starting to eliminate it from their property. We've gone on walks in the neighborhood. My wonderful colleague is here, Nancy Gillis. Perhaps you were in her talk yesterday evening. We will share that message with our neighbors to reduce their energy usage or to be more aware of water in our community. So this pyramid really is guiding my planning. I came across this work by Michael Stone when I was taking part 1 AQ in environmental education a couple of years ago, and it really resonated with me. I firmly believe that when we keep these 4 ideas in mind, we are moving in the right direction with kids. Nature is our teacher. Sustainable living is rooted in deep knowledge of place. And the idea of being able to know your neighborhood and to know your schoolyard has great value. We know that travel is an extraordinary experience, but I also think it's really important to remember that there's tons of learning that can happen when you stay home. And by home, I mean the neighborhood. The real world is the optimal learning environment. Things are so much more meaningful, as we know, when it's rooted in reality, when we can have a real experience together outside. And finally, sustainability is a community practice. This is how I was able to create an outdoor environmental literacy program with my school. It started with a very supportive staff and administrative team who realized and agreed, yes, we do want our kids outside and learning in a meaningful way. We have 40-minute periods at school, and this program works much better with double periods. So I see students once a week for 80 minutes. I'm delivering prep. We don't need to ask permission every single week for the students to leave school property. The Toronto District School Board has an overarching permission form. The family signs it at the beginning of the school year, and we're allowed to stay within the neighborhood with that one and only permission. That makes things much easier. Families have showed beautiful support by doing things like making sure the kids have an extra pair of socks in their bags, because inevitably puddles are very appealing and we get wet. Parents have shown support by offering clothes that their children have outgrown so that we can have a library of raincoats and rain boots. That's been very, very helpful. And finally, I do have a box in the report card, and I use it. So this is in Ontario, we have an environmental curriculum. It's an integrated curriculum, which means the expectations have all been pulled from the other subject areas to create this one document. So that's how I report. Mental health goes hand in hand with being outside. I like to ask the children to just notice how they're feeling when we meet first thing in the morning or after lunch, and remind them that there is no right way to feel, there's no wrong way to feel. We're practicing paying attention to how we feel, because when you know how you feel, then you can decide if you want to do something about it if you're not feeling so fantastic. And then often I'll ask them again later in our time together, once we're outside, once they've had an opportunity to engage with nature, how are you feeling now? What do you notice about yourself? With the older students, I've been using this beautiful picture book called A Handful of Quiet. That's been lovely, and we have been able to do that at home online as well. And here are some other picture books. I am a teacher librarian, and so I'm just delighted to pull books into a program all the time. All right, if you could, I'd like you to consider summertime, and if you would like in the chat, you could just let us know what are some of the things that you love to do outside in summertime, and what are some of the obstacles in being outside in summer. As you look at this photo of the students cooling off their feet, what do you love about summer? Yes, as a teacher, as a human being riding, but oh, hi, Kelly. Thank you. Reading in the sun, water, riding bikes. Thank you for your responses. Great. Me too. And it's great to have all of these ideas in mind. Here's how we started the school year. I had taken an excellent course through the Teacher Monarch Network, and I received a permit to collect and harvest some eggs as long as I would take care of them, and then release the butterflies. This was such a tremendous process to have up close at school. The butterflies, well, the caterpillars were in the library until it was time to bring them outside. And we had a fantastic time. The students couldn't have been more engaged, more interested in seeing how the caterpillars were developing. Can you tell what the kids are doing now that you've got a little bit more context? They are pupating. The youngest kids were showing the life cycle with their bodies. So their feet have the silk button, and they've attached themselves to some milkweed, and they are pupating in their little J shape. The younger students are so eager and happy to show what they understand with their bodies. And so we would fly through the field, and they'd look for the perfect bit of milkweed to land on and lay their eggs. And then they would, of course, turn into the eggs and grow and develop as caterpillars. And of course, anything to do with poop is always exciting, and making the frass and watching the frass and seeing how that changed in color and size and shape over time. And then, of course, releasing the monarch outside just across the street from school was completely spectacular and phenomenal. So lots of questions that stemmed from this experience. And it was truly beautiful seeing how the littlest and the oldest students in the building were quite engaged. If you wouldn't mind, what do you love about fall? The name of the course, or the organization, is the Teacher Monarch Network. And at the end of the slideshow, I've put the icons, or the logos rather, of the organizations that I have turned to for professional development and field trips. So all of that is coming, all of the citing. The teacher librarian in me is loud inside. So everyone will be referenced. Oh, lots of great ideas. Thank you. The decaying. Mm-hmm. One of the things we love to do in the fall near our school is go see the salmon. The East Don River is about 2.5 kilometers from our school. We go on a great big hike this does require a little bit more permission because we're gone for longer and we're near water. The whole experience is so tremendously impactful. The kids love smelling all of the trees along the way, and when we get to see salmon, it really is extraordinary. Again, Nancy in her talk yesterday went into great detail. This is her work and our colleague Steve Kahatal's work. They make everything real. That's what I love about this program and the dedication that the staff have to it. Measurement doesn't have to be about taking linear measurement, about taking a ruler and measuring your pencil and measuring your desk. And sure, that's valuable, but when you can be measuring salmon and comparing that great big fish, because the students have never seen anything like this, of course, and comparing that to the objects that you're familiar with in your classroom, takes so much greater meaning. Seeds are plentiful in the fall, and while we have certainly spent time looking at the ways seeds disperse and collecting all sorts of seeds in the neighborhood, these two programs have brought quite a bit of joy. We found out that the tannin in walnuts is quite strong, and here you can see the kids are using the nuts as sidewalk chalk, and they're just outside the public library that's near our school. So I invited them to make messages that could bring a smile to the faces of our neighbors walking along. And it was great to see how long they lasted. The sumac drink, which maybe you've had the opportunity to try, we just add cold water, and it is a very zippy and citrusy flavor, quite delicious, very refreshing. We really get to have a nice discussion about sustainability, because inevitably the students who like this say, well, I want to take some home and I want to come back tomorrow and let's make more. Well, what would happen if everybody in the school took some sumac? And who else do you think in our community might rely on the sumac? And so this idea of just taking enough and taking only what we need, and then later in the winter when the evidence is right there for us, nothing else is growing, and then you see all the birds who are enjoying the sumac seeds, it makes it really quite clear to the students that sustainability has value. Buckthorn is an invasive species in Toronto, at least, and it also creates a beautiful, beautiful ink. When you paint with it, if you haven't tried this yet, it dries in a very shiny, iridescent, sparkly way. So the photo you can see, we've got the oldest grade. This is a grade 4 or 5 class working with their kindergarten buddies, and they're exploring the ink from the buckthorn berries that they've squished. And the lower photo, the smaller photo, is kindergarten students, and they're painting right on the pavement, you can see. But what to do with the seeds? Well, this was a great way of introducing compost. And why wouldn't we want to compost the seeds? Where does compost go once it's taken away and then brought back? And ensuring that the seeds go in the garbage. We couldn't compost those. We don't want to contribute to spreading the invasive buckthorn. This lesson, or this series of lessons, was quite a surprising treat. We were on a walk, and in the hydropath, we came across, oh wow, it's really late already. It's 4:49, pardon me. Oh no, 4:30, 4:30, I apologize. Okay, I'm back with you again.
Melissa, I was so wrapped up in your presentation, I wasn't watching the time, so please continue.
Okay, we're good. 4:50, right? It's not the top of the clock. Sorry, everyone. I'm a little nervous. The apple tree cascades over the private property into the public area. And so while the tree is definitely on private land, the apples were falling into public space. And so the kids, as you know, adults are highly motivated by food. And this was seen as a treasure. So we zipped back to school and composed a letter asking our neighbor who we don't know, if we could harvest some of the apples that had just been falling to the ground. And sure enough, we got a great big yes. And then this cascaded into a series of lessons about waste. What is waste? And it seemed obvious when we started, and then the kids realized, well, actually, no, because originally the apples that were just sitting on the ground, well, that seemed like something nobody wanted, until we watched them fall and quickly collected them and realized, this is going to be a tasty treat. So we ended up watching a wonderful CBC documentary about food waste and saw that, yes, indeed, this is still good food. So you can see the kids are using knives and they're being smart enough. I think we just needed one Band-Aid for this particular cooking experience. But the apples look nothing like what kids eat from the grocery store. So the idea of ugly fruit and blemished fruit, and does that mean that the whole thing needs to be thrown away, or can we cut away the bruises? Can we cut away the insect marks? We made some delicious applesauce, and this class was so delighted to get to share it with the neighbor who provided the apples, and the rest of the school, everyone got a taste. So this was an example of not having planned anything, and then you get this beautiful series of lessons right in your lap. You just go with it. What I like about ephemeral art is challenging students' ideas of the importance of permanence. Well, I need to keep it. I want to take, oh, Johnny's here too. Hi, Johnny. I've learned lots from Johnny too. That's great. Thanks. The idea that you don't have to keep something forever for it to have been meaningful or for it to have been important in your life. You can enjoy the process, and the product, yes, it has value, but it doesn't have to stay here forever. And so when the leaves blow away, rather than getting terribly frustrated by it, we just realize, oh, well, I don't have control over everything, and that's okay. And with the older kids, the discussion gets a little bit deeper, certainly than with the younger students, but even just posing the question, well, what happens if the leaves do blow away? How will you feel? How do you feel? And that, the world will keep on turning. This series of lessons began with the question of who else lives in our neighborhood other than people, and how do we know who lives here? What kind of evidence might we have access to if we don't get to see the actual bird, the actual squirrel, or the actual wasp? So each class was given a small area around the neighborhood, and we went around counting the bird's nests and the squirrel drays and the wasp's nests, and collected all the data and put it on a great big display. And then the wondering. Well, I wonder, the kids would say, how many squirrels are there? If we know that there are 43 drays within a 1 kilometer radius of our school, does that mean that we have 43 squirrels? Do we know how many of the drays are active? Do we know how many drays one squirrel will make? And does it mean that we have way more squirrels than wasps because we only found 3 wasp nests, for instance? And so the idea of how do you know what you know, and how do scientists collect their observations to share data with us? This really lent itself to many, many wonderful questions. Johnny, do you see your mirror idea? I got that from you guys at Downsview Park. Thank you. Being able to look into the bird's nest. I love to play. Kids love to play. And I really believe that we all need to play. You got to feel good about coming to school, because that's going to set the stage for you to be able to learn and to be able to open yourself to new ideas and experiences. And so when I can say it's playtime, I'm just delighted. We did connect this to dray building. I invited the kids to consider how hard it would be to make a great big pile all by yourself. And if perhaps we worked together, we would be faster and more successful at making the biggest pile ever so they could all jump and play. I think it's really important that we help kids practice how to be observant. We know that when you're learning how to read and to recognize numbers and letters, there are small differences in how those letters and numbers appear. Well, looking at colors, that's great practice, I think, for observing and noticing, because inevitably at the beginning, you'll get a kid who picks up a yellow leaf and shows you an orange piece of paper and says, here, look, it's the same. And then when you turn them around again and they come back, well, it's just great that they are persevering and looking a little bit harder. Oh, pardon me. And then of course, asking also, well, which colors do you think will be harder to find? And which colors will be easier to find? And how do you think the season is going to affect your ability to find objects to match your colors? And then you'll see later, we do play again in the spring to make that comparison. We happened upon some branches that had been pruned along the hydro corridor that's adjacent to our school. The grade fives decided right away they needed to build a bridge to get across this bioswale. The cooperation was just tremendous. They had a real problem that they really wanted to solve, and so they went at it. The kindergarten class, we ended up playing the story of the three little pigs, and we all took turns being the wolves, and they huffed and they puffed and they tried to break down their houses. Again, being outside and having real materials to build your set with, it was just delightful. We're back now at the park that's 500 meters from our school. This is a spectacular, spectacular park, and the weeping willows are magnificent. Usually in November, we're able to collect branches that have fallen and manipulate them into various shapes. The dexterity required and the patience required is quite high for a lot of the kids, but they enjoy it. This is another happenstance series of lessons, pardon me. We had come upon a pile of pruned branches, and it turns out that the home belongs to a family who used to come to our school. So we rang the doorbell and asked, are you using these? Can we take them? So we zipped back to school to get the wheelbarrow from our Opal shed, which I'll come back to Opal a little bit later, and heaved all of these branches back to school. Well, right away, the kids were happy to start building. I wanted to connect the idea of trees as, yes, we know that they're wonderful parts of our ecosystem, and we enjoy being in nature and playing with the trees. But I also wanted the kids to understand that trees are harvested and that it's a huge industry. So I was fortunate enough to attend a program for teachers. It's free for teachers that's run by the Canadian Ecology Center near North Bay. And this was a several-day course, and it was free. We got to go to the forests where the trees were being harvested. We got to go to the mills and learned and was exposed to so much about the lumber industry. So I showed the older kids some slides from that experience that I had. And then we went for a walk and saw, sure enough, there's a house being built near our school. And what materials do you see? Well, where do you think they came from? And just making those connections. What was the name of the program? It's from the Canadian Ecology Center, and it was what was it called? It was a program for teachers. They have a mining program and they have a forestry program. And I'm told that Danielle can find anything with enough time. So perhaps she will have a moment to find that. It's from the Canadian Ecology Center. And of course, with COVID, I don't know if anything is still happening. I was wanting to go to the mining course last summer, which of course wasn't able to go forward. Wintertime, if you could please share, what do you love about winter, being outside in the winter, and what are some obstacles to being outside in the winter with students? Oh yes, Kelly knows about the forestry program too. Skiing, yes, sledding. So sledding's a bit trickier than it used to be, certainly when I was a student in this same area. Now we wear our helmets and make sure that everything gets washed before anyone else wants to use your helmet. It's worth it. Thank you for sharing your ideas. It's too cold. On Ottawa, il fait froid. Oui. Hot chocolate, yes. And you'll see I do feed the kids from time to time as well. It does make things more comfortable to have a treat at the end of an excursion. So this particular hill, I will mention that it scares a lot of the kids at the beginning. They look up and say, fortunately, there's also a less steep part of the hill, but this really is a great way to have the kids start listening to that voice inside. Oh, I'm afraid. Okay, well, what should I do with that fear? Does it mean that I need to start not quite at the top of the hill and see how that feels and then decide? Or do I just sit down and watch first to make sure, okay, they're coming down and they're still safe. Maybe this isn't dangerous. And then the debrief after the activity. Well, how did you feel when you tried something, even though you were scared? Or you still chose to go down the smaller part of the hill, the less steep part. All right, what might you do differently if there's more snow again and we come back in a couple of weeks? Do you think you'll be ready to try going down when it's faster? And just that whole conversation with yourself, really. What does it mean to do something when I'm afraid? And how do I feel when I challenge myself? The temperature rose in a very short period of time, and the schoolyard was flooding. There was so much water and it really was gushing. So I've got the grade fives are with their kindergarten buddies in this photo, and I gave them, those are just discs. I cut up the pool noodles. I have a bag of those. They're very useful. I've been using them since 2001. So these were their ships, and we wanted to see where the water goes as it flows through the schoolyard. And you can see it spilling right out of the schoolyard, over the sidewalk into the sewer. So many questions after watching this, of course. Well, where does the water go next? And what is a sewer? And looking at maps of the watersheds in our neighborhood. And what else goes down the sewer? And where do the sewers let out? Oh, Lake Ontario, right. Okay, and who's been there? And in some years, we've taken kids on a great big trip to go walk along the waterfront and experience our lake. Sometimes the kids have a, I'll get back to that, pardon me. And salt has certainly come up in a discussion like this, where you're seeing the big melt and what else is going down the sewer. All right, Christmas trees have become the most popular loose part at our school. The first year, this was just happenstance. We saw a tree at the side of the road in January and thought, I wonder if we can lift it. And sure enough, the kids worked together and brought it back to school. Well, we realized that this was not enough. So the next year, in December, the kids wrote a letter to the neighbors asking, if you celebrate Christmas and have a live Christmas tree, would you consider letting us have it when you're finished in January? So each student got only one small letter, and then they'd have to decide, well, where am I going to put this? Am I going to give it to the house that has decorations? Am I going to give it to the house that has lights? We don't know for sure if they're celebrating Christmas. We don't know if they have a live tree, but they're going to give it a shot. And so then we're able to look at some ratios of, if we want a tree for each student, how many letters do we think we need to send out? And if we send out this many letters, how many responses might we get? Some good questions about those ratios. Well, we had 56 trees, and with a school of under 200 students, this is tremendous fun. Some people would look at this and see the risks involved, and absolutely, there's no question, the trees are heavy. The trees have sharp branches. We have great talks with the kids about risk assessment, and Opal, Outdoor Play and Learning, a brilliant program, helped guide us in having these discussions with students and with staff. So how do you play safely? If we decide that this is a reasonable risk, what do the students need to do to ensure that the branches don't go in their eyes, and that when you're carrying a tree with two other partners, you communicate effectively before you let go? They do great. We know that children get hurt. And I'm not talking about trips to the ER. I'm talking about scrapes and bruises. This is part of life. It's part of childhood. And I would never want to give anything hazardous to my students to play with and to learn with. I'm certainly comfortable giving them the responsibility with trees. And so boy, do they play, and boy, do they build, and they use their creativity in so many different ways. It's a beautiful thing to watch kids play with these trees at recess. And they build castles and they build forts. They use the trees like stretchers and carry each other around. They race the trees down the hill. They made a little cafe over here. You see the older kids, and we made some hot cedar drink. It's a great time. As the days pass, the trees get lighter, of course. We know that the water's evaporating, but to the students, this is like a magic trick. Am I getting so much stronger? Last week I needed 3 friends to help me carry the tree, and now I just need 1 friend. It's great learning. I could go on about Christmas trees for quite a while. Here's our Opal board that my brilliant colleague, Nancy Gillis, created for our school. If you're not familiar with Opal, I certainly encourage you to investigate. It's a brilliant program that really values play and recognizes that this is how children learn, and it's their right. It is their need to play and explore and to take reasonable risks and to not be told no all the time. What happens to the trees? Well, different things have happened to the trees. We still have some trees from last year in the schoolyard. So now we kind of have 2 generations of trees. We've got the trees that still have green and they still have needles. And we also have trees that are just down to the trunks. So they're still excellent building materials. The problem is the mowing. And we're still working with TDSB in communicating with us when they're coming to mow, because we have no problem just moving all the trees over onto the asphalt area if we know we're coming on Tuesday. But when they come on Tuesday and the next time they come on Thursday and then they come on Friday, it's a little bit tricky. So the answer is, I'm not exactly sure, but it is on my list to call the City of Toronto and see about maybe having mulching happening right on site. Or just keeping them, really, because they're great. Here's some more playtime outside. I love this book. It's called Rosie's Glasses. And the idea of literal and figurative meaning is displayed so well with this resource. We literally brighten things up with the paint, and then we also pay attention to our feelings. What's the figurative lightening and brightening when we enjoy our time outside? This is that same favorite park again, and just enjoying how the ice forms. Nancy's done a great job with the students. We have that hydro field right near our house. We had a former student who had solar panels on his house. We got a great lecture from him. I'm speeding up a little bit because I am cognizant it's 5:10. All right, the sugar bush. So those of you who are not in Toronto, our school is in a residential neighborhood. We've got a lot of Ontario housing, so subsidized apartment buildings, and we have some houses. And I decided, well, we should make maple syrup in the city. You're not allowed to tap City of Toronto trees, but you certainly are allowed to tap the trees that are on private property. So we write a letter to the neighbors and we asked if we could tap their tree. Turns out that Norway maples, which are an invasive species, have sap that's just as sweet as sugar maple sap. So each class fortuitously was able to be responsible for one tree. So they tapped one tree, and over the course of about a month, got to do the whole thing.
Wow.
The staff room becomes the sugar shack. My colleagues tolerate me. The hallway smells really good, but I do take up some space in the fridge at least. And the kids all come into the staff room, of course, to see and to smell and to taste. Along the way, we collected a tremendous amount of data. We measured volume of sap, of course, collected from each tree. And we wondered, well, why isn't this equal when all the trees are in, well, they're within a 2-kilometer loop, which we measured. The kids measured the sugar content of the sap over time using a refractometer. We measured drips per minute. And on the other axis, we had temperature to see if there was a relationship. We measured circumference of the trees. It was so fun. This is an infographic made by a student in grade 3 trying to sum up our learning, or at least the mathematical parts of our learning.
Amazing.
We said thank you, of course. The students made beautiful cards using wallpaper samples, and we did have enough syrup. I'm pleased to say all of the neighbors got about 40 milliliters of syrup. Each student got a spoonful of syrup. Hooray. Springtime. I do care what you like about spring, but I also want to show you some slides. So I'm just going to zoom ahead if that's all right.
Yep.
We had enough maple syrup at the end of.
What happened?
I think it's Melissa. Hopefully she comes back very
Bread.
soon.
Okay.
Melissa, you just cut out for a bit there,
Oh,
but you're back.
okay, good, because I haven't done anything. I'm sitting on my hands and trying to not disrupt anything. So we bought stale bread from the grocery store because we know that it is not wasted food when you're soaking it in eggs from Ontario and butter from Ontario. And it was great. So there's procedural writing, there's real life experiences. The classroom teachers at my school are tremendous. They branch off into the more academic aspects of these experiences. We've walked to the nearby creek to clean up. Here's a nice action piece. And this was connected to the Water Walkers program. We play. And we go on field trips. So thank you to Allison, Johnny. I've learned so much from these wonderful educators at Downsview Park with my whole family. We've had EcoSpark come in who insisted, no, Melissa, this program is for high school students. And I said, oh, but please, my kids are really, really great and they're used to going outside. So please come. And it's brilliant because you get to learn about your water. You don't go on a big field trip and you don't take the subway all the way downtown to go to Lake Ontario. You go to the water that's a kilometer away from school. And this was tremendous learning. And of course, wearing those waders was a hoot. Some more color matching and making the comparison to what was available in the spring to what's available in the fall. We had planted garlic in the fall and then harvested the little scapes in June. Here's some more Downsview Park learning. There's garlic mustard everywhere. So of course we're going to eat it. That was a delightful treat to make at school. Being open to learning, I'm finding, is the most important part of learning outside with students. When there's a huge storm and a tree is uprooted, of course, you're going to spend some time and look at that. When there's an arborist on your street, you're going to interview them and find out, well, why did you prune that tree? Why did you cut down that tree? What's the problem? When pipes are being installed, we interview everybody. I find that my shyness just evaporates when I've got a whole class of curious students with me. Okay, good. I have made it through. I love it when people can come to my school. Yes, my kids like me, but when I can say, look, an expert, that is far superior. So this year, of course, is completely different. But in real life, when everybody can come into the building, we've had so many tremendous experts come into school and share their knowledge and passion with students. Here are some of the places that I have gone to for learning, and I'll leave that up. All right, there we go. We've got 14 minutes for our planned Q&A, and I'm just going to change the screen so I can see all of you. Thank you for your attention and your very positive feedback popping up on the screen. That's lovely.
Melissa, I was mesmerized. I feel like I want to come to your school and do those activities with you and the kids. I was mesmerized. I love the fact that you've got the double periods, which gives you the opportunity to be relaxed, and that it's a regular thing that every child in the school is getting this experience on a regular basis. Yeah.
I value that highly as well. All right, so we're inviting questions. I believe we've made it to that part.
Okay. One question from Camille. What grades do you teach again?
I have a school with kindergarten to grade 5 students.
No. What a fantastic presentation. Oh, this is Danielle.
Thank you. Merci. It's quite something to see Johnny here.
Yeah.
on the other side, my teacher Johnny is attending my talk. That's pretty special.
So permission forms, did you encounter any obstacles with the parents around getting that blanket permission to go off site?
It's a standard form in my school board. The Toronto District School Board distributes that to every single student. And so the answer is no. There is a learning curve, certainly, with the students who come to our school in grade 4. We have an extended French program, and there is quite the difference between students who grow up with us and come when they're 4 years old, and then when they get plonked here as 9-year-olds in grade 4, and if they've not encountered any kind of outdoor experiences at their school when they were in kindergarten, grade 1, 2, 3, there is certainly a conversation, many conversations sometimes that happen with those families to make sure that everyone is comfy and that they're okay on these adventures.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about the trust the evolution of trust between you and your students as you go outside? Because I would imagine that's really important.
Absolutely. I'm really delighted and fortunate that many of our students stay. We don't have a transient population. And so the trust builds up over years. And watching these kids grow up is really tremendously special. At the beginning of the school year, we don't go very far at all. I need to know that I can trust the kids. And I also need to wait till those permission forms get back. And so the beginning really is exploring all the joys of the schoolyard and making sure that students know that you stay with me. And when I say it's time to come back, you come back. And then gradually making that area larger and larger and larger. And we practice crossing the street. Once it's a residential area, but we still practice. I mean, I'll stand at one side of the curb and model. Okay, I'm looking here, and it's a very didactic. You got to show me that you know how to cross the street, and you're not talking when you cross the street. You're paying attention, and you're just crossing the street. So yes, there is that overt teaching of safety skills to make sure that we can all trust each other.
So it's one teacher with how many students?
It depends. I love that in kindergarten, the ECE comes with. So that's great. Yeah. When I have the older students, this is prep time. So the classroom teacher is busy learning and preparing for school. So I'm alone. Yeah. But every once in a while, we'll have teacher candidates, and that has been tremendously helpful to have a second educator with me. And of course, depending on the group, we do more or we do less, right? They have to show me that they are going to follow the safety rules. And they do, because they want to experience all of the great things that are outside. So they know they need to bring it, and they do. Yeah.
I bet they're pretty excited for their Melissa time.
Yes.
You know, it's like,
I mean, you're asking me to share my experiences, so it's not really boasting to tell you that it is so wonderful to hear the junior classes all write reflection letters home at the end of the week. And when the classroom teachers tell me they're writing about OEL again, Melissa, they're writing about what they did with you this week. It really does feel wonderful to know that what I think is so important is landing with them.
Let's see if we have any other questions coming up. Do you have any suggestions for online environmental learning? Hopefully we won't need it too much longer, but.
So I have been in this situation for several months in the spring. I was delivering OEL online, and then again in the winter in Toronto, and now I'm back to this chair trying to deliver meaningful experiences to kids. So do I have suggestions? The obstacles I'm facing, of course, are that many of our students are in an apartment building, and many of their parents are very busy, and they can't just take them outside for a walk. And the kids can't just go outside into the backyard and be outside and explore. So I'm finding that the activities that require a specific go outside and are only being completed by some of the kids. The idea of this show and tell where come into my backyard and let's watch the birds. I've done it for about 5 minutes at a time, and then we'll come back inside and on the Cornell site, we'll play the Snap ID game where you look at the two birds and we're focusing on chickadees, and they identify that black-capped chickadee, and then we read a book about a black-capped chickadee, and then they draw a picture of a black-capped chickadee, and we all play let's do the chickadee hokey pokey with the kindergarten students. It's okay. I'm not feeling particularly jazzed about school right now. I made a conscious choice to not put that component in this presentation. Yeah. It's okay. I'm doing okay right now. Yeah. I mean, the Christmas trees, that was a good one online, because we looked at the various ways people in the country are dealing with their Christmas trees. We saw how they're being used to as a barrier to prevent invasive species from traveling through waterways. We saw that farms are taking the Christmas trees and zoos to provide fun activities for the animals. So that was a useful thing to do at home, because they really could do better when you're sitting at a computer.
Yeah.
It's okay. We need to go outside.
Do we have any time? We have a bit of time left. What about working with the classroom teachers to extend the learning? Could you talk, you did talk about it, but could you talk a little
Yes.
more?
Yes. What's beautiful about, or what, not the one thing, my school is a fabulous place to be. We are a group of teachers who want to learn and who want to improve and who really want to make school this great place to be. And it's growing. It's certainly growing. There's a core group of us who, oh, there, Nancy's turned her camera back on. So Nancy, let's call it. So Nancy's back. She's the number one OEL extend the learning person in our building. She's creative. She takes risks. We talk all the time. It requires a commitment to communicate and to say, how can I connect the curriculum to all of these experiences that clearly matter to the students? The students are engaged, but I have a job to do and it has to match these expectations. Can I make it happen? And so Nancy and a couple other people in our building are able to take those risks and are able to be creative and go with it. I mean, we talk all the time. When I come back from, it's prep, right? So I get to deliver the kids back. And I'll always come and tell the teachers, this is what the main focus was today, and this is what the students were particularly interested in. If you could do X, Y, Z, or X, that would be really helpful. I mean, that water day where the snow was melting, I can't show, I mean, I can, but the classroom teacher really can do so much more with a watershed map and so much more with the road salt than I can. So I can start it, and then they need to, or they can extend it. And a lot of them do.
Yeah. I love that. Commitment to communicate, creativity, and willing to take risks. Yeah. I think being creative with how a curriculum is interpreted.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a few more minutes left.
I don't know, Nancy, do you want to say something about this? No, okay. We'll pretend you're not here. Okay. She did a brilliant talk yesterday. I recognize some of your names from that talk. She's on Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I'm finding Twitter is an excellent resource. So I hope you will as well.
Melissa, I know someone had asked if you have a copy of the presentation that you would be willing to share, or maybe you have your Twitter handle or some way for folks to get in touch with you after the presentation.
Oh, thank you. I should advance the next slide. There we go.
Yeah.
Advance the slide. So my whole name at the Toronto District School Board, and there's the Twitter handle. I do love my job, so I'm delighted to talk with you about this, about your job, about your dreams. This really is a dream. If you had told me at the beginning of my career that one day I would be delivering an outdoor environmental literacy program in the city, I mean, I just would have fallen over. And I get to be the teacher librarian and provide resources that help the whole school. I mean, that's excellent. That's excellent scheduling. The years that I had outdoor environmental literacy and then a library period with the students, they'd come back from outside with a gazillion questions and we'd end up in the library. And it couldn't be more perfect. You want to know this, this, and this, here you go, here you go, here you go. Yeah. The engagement couldn't have been higher.
Oh, I would love to put you in front of, a room full of principals to hear about the kind of planning and leadership that allows that kind of synergy and, to take place in a school. Yeah.
It's taken many years.
Yeah.
Many years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your enthusiasm and your wonderful presentation. It's really inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I'm delighted that people care about this. It feels great. Oh, Kelly, nice to see you. Thank you, Johnny.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa. And Brenda, I don't know if you have any closing comments, but it is 5:30.
Yeah, I think we're done.
Yeah, well, thanks, Brenda. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, delegates, for joining us. And we hope that you get to attend some more lovely ecom sessions this weekend, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you.
you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Melissa, let's keep in touch.